So, Martins, a licensed marriage and family therapist, couples therapist. Let's continue with our conversation from last week. So, I promised you that today we'll be talking about the non-ADHD partners parts. Um, those who may have negative or adverse childhood experiences, who identify as the far this end of the spectrum of ADHD, meaning you don't have enough ADHD symptoms to qualify for the diagnosis of ADHD, and in your relationship that's affected by the ADHD, you tend to be the partner that overfunctions and compensate for your partner who is on this side of the spectrum of ADHD and having more symptoms of ADHD and their functions. Okay, so that's my obvious saying. This is all relative. Everyone is on the spectrum when it comes to the ADHD criteria diagnosis. No one is free from any of the distractibility and those procrastination symptoms, right? Including myself. So if I were to narrow it down to this side, someone who is identified as the non-ADHD partner who overfunctions in their relationship with someone who is on this end of the ADHD spectrum, and also someone who has adverse childhood experiences that you're aware of and that's impacting your nervous system, meaning you tend to have flashbacks and you get irritable, that you get activated quite often by seemingly not very significant events in life, then you get into fight or flight at the 5 Fs, right? So I talked about CPTSD a little bit before, so I'm not going to get deep into it, and you can look back at a video talking about CPTSD if you're interested. So I wanted to talk about those parts, right? In the same framework we discussed last time with the ADHD partner. So we'll look at the vulnerable childhood parts that's being tucked away, and the one that tend to act in, the one tend to act out, and then also something in between that acting and act out, more passive aggressive. And then we'll look at the older maladaptive protector parts tend to be more like a teenager parts. Looking at it, the more proactive ones and then very reactive impulsive ones. So those are the framework we're looking at, and we're going to go to each category. The first, let's look at the vulnerable child part. So if you think about a child before the age of 8, where their cognitive skills are preliminarily developed when they have a good causational thinking and logical thinking, can form ideas and start to look outside to look for role models in their life, and to start to figure it out, how to operate in the world, how to adapt themselves in the world, right? Before that, so 0 to 8, we're actually quite vulnerable, that you may not be able to feed yourself, for example, that you need your parents to provide food for you, not just to leave you food, but also cook for you, because see, you don't know how to turn on the gas stove, you don't know how to use the microwave, you're too short to get to that you really rely on them to provide food and shelter and medical care, education opportunities. Not saying that after 8 you can do that, fend yourself, but you have some capacities. Before 8, you are totally 100% dependent on your parents, on the caregivers. So if the children in that time, of course, we gravitate towards pleasing, making sure we are safe, we survive by adapting to what the caregivers set the framework that we're supposed to be living in, operating from. So if your parents say, well, I want you to be quiet when you're inside a house, you need to use indoor voice. If you yell and scream and cry, louder than they can tolerate, you either get sent to the bathroom or you're punished that there's no food or dessert for you, for example. Then you learn very quickly, I want to tone it down. I want to down-regulate my excitement, right? So where does the energy go, though? The frustration, the excitement? or some children, they naturally gravitating towards acting in. They start to bring that energy towards themselves, right? Which we learned that's called a boomerang, and that causes depression. So the concept those children tend to have, I notice in the more showing signs of CPTSD partners in the ADHD affected relationship, they tend to have the narratives of I don't matter, my needs don't matter, that I'm not important. There is the desperation of I need to eliminate, ignore, tuck away my needs in order to be okay with my caregiver and to survive in this environment. And I'm willing to do that, even though that makes me feel very shitty, right? So you get depressed. And that's the act-in type of children. And there's also the act-out type of children. And they tend to have a huge outer critic. And they tend to make other people feel that you don't matter. So before you can reject me and say my needs don't matter, let me reject you and say your needs don't matter. And those partners tend to act out in their relationship and show up as, and they abandon their partner first. They say they have a fight and then they abandon their partner, leave the relationship prematurely without talking about it. To say it's a protest, it's attachment protest, saying, well, because my needs didn't get met and respected, and I'm still so hurting, so I want to act so preemptively to hurt you before you can hurt me, right? So that's the act out child. Act-in child, inner critic and shame, that I don't deserve this. Act out child, that you don't matter, your needs don't matter, and I'm not going to respond to your needs, and let me get rid of you so I will be okay. Okay. What about the one in between, the passive aggressive ones? And those are the ones that's the energy, they have the aggression, they got in touch with that, and they don't observe and follow, you know, the what their partners the requests and needs. And then but they also don't have the gut to say no, I'm not going to do that, your needs don't matter. Okay. So what they do is they placate and then they fawn, right? You think about the 5 F's, the fawn. They will say, okay, I will meet your needs. If that's what you want me to take care of you, you want me to accommodate to you, you want me to, you know, pick up your slacks, and yeah, I'll do that because I don't want to get into trouble. I don't want you to leave me so I'm not being alone for the rest of my life. And I will not do it on time. I will not do it the way you want it. I will withhold love and care and attention. I will cruise, but you won't feel the love and care genuinely coming from my heart because I don't really want to give it to you because my needs are not met. So that's the passive aggressive one. So here are the 3 young child part, right? Think about 0 to 8 younger children that they don't have a lot of capacity to take care of themselves and to negotiate about their needs. They haven't learned how to do that. And then that's the way they protest in some, like act in, act out, being passive aggressive. What is the core wound? You probably already get that, right? The core wound for this type of children's parts is that no one sees me. I don't matter. My needs don't matter. Everybody's needs, you know, are more important than mine. There's a sense of out of control that they're not being cared for. Their basic needs for, you know, sometimes it's food, shelter, and education and health. Sometimes it's emotional needs. This fundamental human needs for connection, being seen and cared for, that you matter, that you're hurting, that matters to me. Your expression of frustration matters to me. So when that's not being seen, accepted, and being talked away, they really feel out of control. So what do? They act in, they act out, they're being passive aggressive, right? And it totally makes sense. It totally makes sense to me when there's so much pain and you don't know what the other ways to express them. And that's the way you know, right? That's the way either you learned, you observed, you've been practicing, that comes familiar to you. It's not bad. It's just limiting, right? So, and then when they grow older and then they learn from other people and from their caregivers more, and they start to develop more what we call maladaptive teenager part, the protectors, they're kind of coming in to stand up for those young children. They want to like, that sucks. Let me help you out. But because their age and developmental stages and the capacities, they actually can't do a great job either. So they're either being very proactive, right? The over-functioning partner with CPTSD tend to have a lot of very critical parts, like inner critic, outer critic, and the people pleaser part, and the perfectionistic part, and the savior fixer part, and all of them actually trying to achieve one goal, is to control the environment, control the people they love, in order to have a sense of control. Because what's going on inside, the pain, that my needs don't matter, it's just too painful for them to look at and to sit with. So they direct their energy externally, proactively, to focus on other people or things. Could be work, right? In order to be okay. Are they okay though? No, they're not okay. So when the proactive parts doesn't do the work, it's not enough. They still have crisis and they still feel the pain, right? Say if there's a breakup, there's a divorce, there's a life events like disease, disability happens that they can't overfunction anymore. That really hit them hard. The proactive protectors doesn't work anymore. So then the impulsive and reactive protectors tend to step up in this case. And the difference between the CPTSD partner, the non-ADHD partners, protectors from the ADHD partners, the protector, I noticed, they tend to be taking a higher ground, right? It could show up as any of the 5 Fs, right? A lot of them do the fight-flight dynamic, the part that's called a fight-flight, meaning they come in and break up. They attack you, say you're not good enough, right? At the outer critic, that you're so bad that you have this and behavior because you're ADHD and you hurt me so much, I'm gone. And don't even give the other person an opportunity to talk about their perspective, but they're not curious, right? To explore and to work with them. So they attack, they run. That's called the fight-flight part. That is actually impulsive, reactive part, right? And another part of them, all kinds of the addictions, right? It tends to be more like a love, sex addiction, or addicted to caregiving behaviors, addicted to something seemingly healthy, but is really another form of addiction. For example, diets and exercise, meditation even, retreats, seemingly healthy and adaptive behaviors. But when they're obsessed with it, in order to stay away from the pain that's deep inside, that my needs don't matter, that I can't talk about my needs, I can't negotiate to get my needs met with my partner, because they always take the center stage, right? And the victim blaming part, saying, you're the one that take all the space in the relationship, there's nothing left for me. So they don't have the capacity to hold their pain and really grieve the loss in early childhood, that their needs are not fully met because their parents' maladaptive behaviors. So these kind of parts, they tend to do what? To give in order to get love. They give and give and give until they're exhausted, and they still don't get what they want. They're like, I'm giving you so much, why don't you give me what I want? Well, without even saying what they really want. And because they're focused all their energy on their partner with ADHD, right? To fix them, to save them, to criticize them, that they cannot see. Well, I've got pain inside of me. I want to be helped and supported and loved and cared for. Right? So that's the over-functioning parts, right? They tend to be the one that develop to protect those 0 to 8 young vulnerable parts that don't get their needs met and seen for whatever reasons. I've seen clinically that those partner, the non-ADHD overfunctioning partner, their parents either have substance abuse issues, or they went through the war, and they went through a divorce, mental illness, disease, and immigration trauma, where their parents are narcissistic and very self-involved, or with certain kind of conditions that they prevent them from connecting to the children emotionally and meeting their emotional needs. And there's no blame for them. We all go through trauma in life. It's very much predictable in some way, right? Nobody has a perfect childhood, and nobody has a perfect parent. So the parent's limitation can lead to those early childhood negative experiences. When we don't have any other resources out there for us to contain us, we develop those maladaptive aspects of us to survive. It's really for the benefit of us to survive. But nowadays, as we get older and wiser, we have more resources, life is better. We are actually entering an era of thriving instead of surviving now, transitioning to that. But our brain hasn't caught up. Our brain still think that everything is dangerous, that we are going to lose our love, and we're going to go without food, right? And then that's the old part of the brain, limbic system, that still haven't been updated. I hope maybe someday the technology can come in. They're just going, let's update a version of this program, so we know that we have food, we have money, that we have jobs, that we don't have to worry all the time that we're going to lose the love and care that we deserve so much, that we can provide that for ourselves, right? So until next time, I would love to bring in different frameworks and lenses to look at those parts with you. So I've done some studying with you from the more IFS perspective with parts work, and I would love to bring in different lenses. So till next week.